Welcome, welcome. Give it one more minute.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Joel.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Oh, hi, Mom. Mom is here. Nice. Nice background, Cindy. It's where I was just a couple weeks ago.
I think
Also,
it's appropriate for Torah study.
and appropriate, especially for what we're going to be talking about today also. So, yeah, good one. Hey, Carol.
Rabbi.
Give it one more minute. We'll get started.
Hello, Rabbi.
So,
You're on two places because my microphone doesn't work. So I have you.
So I think you have to.
Sorry.
Wow, now it's on a loop. Okay. We'll get started. Hi, everyone. Really good to be with all of you. I haven't done Torah study in a while because the time change would not allow for such when I was in Israel this summer. And that, I mean, I could spend the whole time focused on that trip. I'll just say that spending 3.5 weeks in Israel, focused in Jerusalem, where I was studying at the Shalom Hartman Institute, which is a think tank dedicated to looking at the relationship between Israel and diaspora, specifically North American Jewry, and looking at not only the immediate needs of that relationship, but also thinking long-term and big picture about the relationship between Israel and diaspora Jews and the challenges we face both independently and together. And I'm now a part of a 3-year fellowship program. There are 25 rabbis from around the country. Some of us are Reform, conservative, a couple of Orthodox, so a pluralistic setting. And we're going to spend the next 3 years together in Jerusalem for a week in January, February, and then 3.5 weeks in the summer. Learning together from basically 8:30 a.m. until 8 p.m. About all kinds of issues. It's kind of a combination of current issues. Part of this 3.5 weeks is about current issues. So in this case, it was post October 7th related, and then also bigger picture issues. So for the 3 years that we're together, learning from scholars and thought leaders on focused this first year on the idea of peoplehood, Jewish peoplehood, then a year on faith, and then another year on values and ethics, and spending time thinking big picture about the future of the Jewish people and the future of Jewish community and values based on our ancient tradition as well as contemporary sources. So it's a lot of time. Half the day is spent in Chavruta study, which is basically you sit down with one or two other people and look at text and discuss that. And then the scholars would then give a lecture as well on that same topic, kind of riffing off of those sources. So really powerful to be in Israel. As I've started talking about with people, because I'm still kind of taking it all in. I've been home, I guess, a couple weeks, but still sitting with me, of course. I was really hoping that I would walk away with a real sense of hope and optimism about the future. And the truth is, I didn't walk away with that, and I don't want to hide that. And that's just kind of the reality of what seems to be the landscape of both life in Israel and for Israelis, and also for many of us here in the diaspora. So I'm looking for the glimmers of hope and how to find threads of hope in the challenge and in the chaos. But it was a really challenging time. For example, we met with a mother of a hostage. The hostage is pretty well known here in the US. His name is Hirsch Goldberg Poland, because he's one of the dual citizens, American Israeli citizens, who's still being held hostage. She was with basically 30 other young people who ran away from the Nova concert. And just a plug, thank you to Ben Goldfarb and his wife and the brigade. The Nova exhibit has come to Los Angeles, and it's going to be opening soon. And seems like it's going to be an incredible experience for those who can go to it. And anyway, so all of these 30 young people ran to a shelter because the Nova concert was off this main road. And so as they were running away, they went to a bus stop, and all bus stops in that area, which is called the Gaza envelope, have these concrete bunkers where you have to go because when you are that close to Gaza, you have 15 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds to get to shelter when the sirens go off. And so they went to the shelter, and there were 30 of them in there. And one of his friends, Aner, stood at the kind of the entryway to the shelter. And as the terrorists would throw a grenade into the shelter, he would pick up the grenade and throw it back. And he did that 7 times. And then on the 8th time, he was killed when a grenade exploded on him. And then Hirsch also was trying to help and lost an arm with one of the grenades, and he survived. Many of the people in that bunker were killed, and then he was taken hostage. So we met with his mom, Rachel, who's been working tirelessly since October 7th on behalf of her son and on behalf of all the hostage families. And to hear from her about how she hasn't given up hope. And as she said, hope is mandatory. And at the same time, she said, I've been in front of every world leader and famous person you can think of. And you would think that that kind of access would be something that would be hopeful and optimistic. She said that it's such a grind, and everyone has so many different priorities and constituencies that they're thinking about, that this is the hardest work anyone could ever do. So hearing her sense of feeling defeated in some ways, and yet still hopeful, meeting with the woman who I'm hoping will come to Wilshire when she's in town, this woman Kochav, who has basically spent since October 7th documenting all the sexual crimes that existed on October 7th and trying to bring that to the world, because there was a lot of denial about that. So she went and spoke to the UN, and the work that she's having to do, and how she is the recipient of all of the information and all the media and all the WhatsApp chains from family members of people who were victims of sexual violence, and even going to the point where she's trying to coin a new term for not genocide, but familial-cide, basically, because is this idea that whole families were victims in certain ways. Anyway, so those kinds of things were very intense and very troubling. And still some glimmers of hope, but really a really tough time to be in Israel, and tough conversations. So not really uplifting. And the rest of this conversation is not going to be uplifting either, just so you know, because we have the holiday coming up on Monday night. Instead of focusing on Devarim, I really wanted to focus on Tisha B'Av, which is coming up on Monday night. Cindy, when I saw her background, I said it's appropriate, not only because it's Torah study, but because Tisha B'Av is that holiday, the one other 24-hour fast day where we commemorate all the things that have tragically occurred with the Jewish people over the course of time. The biggest being, of course, the destruction of the first and second temple. And so I wanted to focus a little bit on Lamentations, and for us just to look at the first chapter of Lamentations, which is also called Echa, which is either termed usually in the translation alas, but really means how, That's the book that we read on Tisha B'Av, just like at other holidays, Purim and Passover, we have certain books that we read for each of those holidays. Lamentations is the book that we read on Tisha B'Av. And then I want to look at some contemporary keynote. Keynote are basically the Book of Lamentations is made up of 5 chapters, and each of those are considered kind of like mini poems, not upbeat poems at all, that are somewhat in conversation with one another and kind of riff off the idea of destruction and the depression and sadness and anger that comes with that. Most of them are acrostics, which means that they start with every letter of the alphabet. Every stanza starts with the next consecutive letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And there have been some contemporary versions of these that have been written post October 7th that I thought we could share, one of which we studied when we were in Jerusalem. And there's basically a music video version of it that I also wanted to share. So we're going to do a little bit of multimedia today, and just have the space to reflect on your own responses and reactions to the text, more than necessarily me teaching in the same way, but more how do we learn from each other. Again, this idea of Lamentations and the contemporary poems that we'll be looking at as poetry, though much of the Torah we still kind of bring that poetic interpretation to. Poetry gives even, I think, a broader landscape for us to bring our own interpretations, and it's just a different way to look at text. And I think for me, where I am, it was important to really link this idea of Tisha B'Av with October 7th. In some ways, they are very different. In some ways, they are connected. And so for us, depending on time, whether we get into a conversation about that as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay, and if we have time at the very end, I'll just give a little plug and a preview for what we're going to be doing on Monday night. If you want to come to the Resnick campus at 7 p.m., one of the things, I'll just give the plug now. One of the things we did is we had this producer and filmmaker, Giddy Dar, come and speak with us and show his film, Legend of Destruction, which basically he spent years studying all the texts surrounding the destruction of the temple, both rabbinic texts, looked at Josephus, other historical writings, and wanted to create a film that would capture the complexity of the situation in Jerusalem at the time of the fall of the temple, and to do so and to present it in a way that would be powerful. And mostly he made it for an Israeli audience. It was first released a couple years ago on Tisha B'Av in Hebrew. It's now re-released in English, dubbed in English. And it's a really powerful, so we watched it and we spoke to him, and you know, initially it was released to try and get Israelis, many of whom are secular and have no connection to Tisha B'Av, to see a connection to Tisha B'Av, but also because of what the story really tells us about the infighting between Jews at that time. He also wanted to bring it up and explore the kind of the Jewish core to some of the divisiveness that has existed, continues to exist in Israel. Of course, something we all are aware of in our own country here. And he did it in this kind of animated, slightly animated way that's really cool. I'll just do it now. I'll show the trailer just so you can see it, and see kind of how he created it. And then we're gonna show the film on Monday night. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about its connections to what's happening in the Jewish community now, what's happening in the US, what's happening in Israel. We're gonna read some of the Book of Lamentations with Cantor Peacock. She's gonna chant some of that. We'll look at some contemporary poetry. If you haven't been to a Tisha B'Av commemoration, I think this is a year worth attending. And it's not an upbeat thing, but it is something that can be meaningful. And so I would urge you to think about coming. So I'm just going to share this now. As long as it's brief.
Blessed be his glorious name forever and ever.
Witness, Lord. Some walk on silk carpets, while others fight over the rags.
Jewish talk? No.
It's disgraceful.
Jerusalem will only be destroyed because of senseless hatred.
You will conquer Jerusalem, my love.
The time has come to attack.
There's no reason to rush. The Jews are slaughtering each other, making our job easier.
Master of the universe. Is this what you wanted?
So that's the preview. It's a really powerful film, and I think a great way to kind of understand the complexity of what happened back then. So hopefully you'll join us. Okay. Any questions or reactions, reflections, anything at this moment before we look at the text? Okay. All right. Let me see why I cannot find this. All right. Second, start with this. Okay. As we dig into it, first, of course, the blessing for engaging in the study of Torah, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So again, we're going to focus on the Book of Lamentations to begin with, and then some interesting interpretations of that for contemporary times. But as I've already kind of described this, I will also put in the chat at some point this, so you can, as I try to always do, so you can take it with you and study it at home and have the passages if you want. Let me see if I can just do that now. I'm not great at the multitasking, but I'm really trying here. So give me 1 second here. I will share that. Okay, great. Now you have it. Okay. So the first one, it's a little long, but I want us to read it because, again, most of the time, we as liberal Jews have not taken the time to really experience Tisha B'Av or study the Book of Lamentations. And I honestly believe, just like the Book of Numbers, which takes place in the summer, one of the reasons is it's in the summer, and most people are not as tuned in to Jewish life, and they are traveling, and we'll kind of, it's before the big fall season of all the Jewish holidays, so we don't really have this on top of mind, but it is a significant commemoration in our tradition, and the writing in the Book of Lamentations is really depressing and upsetting. And the whole idea is sometimes you actually sit on the floor in a dark room and you hear this chanted. You'll hear a little bit of it if you come on Monday night, but there's just this melodic, depressing tune in which it's chanted. But I want to read it, and then as I read it, I want you to be thinking about what stands out to you, what kind of emotions, what kind of words or ideas stand out to you once we get through the whole thing. Okay, so I'm just going to read it. It's a little long. Alas, or another translation, how lonely sits the city, once great with people. She that was great among nations is become like a widow. The princess among states is become a thrall. Bitterly she weeps in the night, her cheek wet with tears. There is none to comfort her of all her friends. All her allies have betrayed her. They have become her foes. Judah has gone into exile because of misery and harsh oppression. When she settled among the nations, she found no rest. All her pursuers overtook her in the narrow places. Zion's roads are in mourning, empty of festival pilgrims. All her gates are deserted. Her priests sigh. Her maidens are unhappy. She is utterly disconsolate. Her enemies are now the masters. Her foes are at ease. Because the Lord has afflicted her for her many transgressions, her infants have gone into captivity before the enemy. Gone from fair Zion are all that were her glory. Her leaders were like stags that found no pasture. They could only walk feebly before the pursuer. All the precious things she had in the days of old, Jerusalem recalled in her days of woe and sorrow, when her people fell by enemy hands with none to help her, when enemies looked on and gloated over her downfall. Jerusalem has greatly sinned. Therefore, she's become a mockery. All who admired her despise her, for they have seen her disgraced, and she can only sigh and shrink back. Her uncleanness clings to her skirts. She gave no thought to her future. She has sunk appallingly, with none to comfort her. See, O Lord, my misery, how the enemy jeers. The foe has laid hands on everything dear to her. She has seen her sanctuary invaded by nations which you have denied admission into your community. All her inhabitants sigh as they search for bread. They have bartered their treasures for. They keep themselves alive. See, O Lord, and behold how abject I have become. May it never befall you. All who pass along the road, look about and see. Is there any agony like mine, which was dealt out to me when the Lord afflicted me on his day of wrath? From above, he sent a fire down into my bones. He spread a net for my feet. He hurled me backward. He has left me forlorn in constant misery. The yoke of my offenses is bound fast, lashed tight by his hand, imposed upon my neck. It saps my strength. The Lord has delivered me into the hands of those I cannot withstand. The Lord in my midst has rejected all my heroes. He has proclaimed a set time against me to crush my young men. As in a press, the Lord has trodden fair maiden Judah. For these things do I weep. My eyes flow with tears. Far from me is any comforter who might revive my spirit. My children are forlorn, for the foe has prevailed. Zion spreads out her hands. She has no one to comfort her. The Lord has summoned against Jacob his enemies all about him. Jerusalem has become among them a thing unclean. The Lord is in the right, for I have disobeyed him. Hear, all you peoples, and behold my agony. My maidens and my youths have gone into captivity. I cried out to my friends, but they played me false. My priests and my elders have perished in the city as they searched for food to keep themselves alive. See, O Lord, the distress I am in. My heart is in anguish to disobey. Outside, the sword deals death. Indoors, the plague. When they heard how I was sighing, there was none to comfort me. All my foes heard of my plight and exulted, for it is your doing. You have brought on the day that you threatened. Oh, let them become like me. Let all their wrongdoing come before you, and deal with them as you have dealt with me. For all my transgressions, for my sighs are many, and my heart is sick. Reactions. What's going on here? What stands out to you? Susan.
It's very depressing. I mean, it's like the most depressing thing I think that exists. But some of the one speaking seems to shift somewhat. Jeremiah speaking at sometimes. He's also the identification of Jerusalem as feminine. as a woman is another, to me, very striking thing, and comparing some of it to a woman's looseness. Then the other thing that strikes me is that God is inflicting some of this punishment on the people. And why? Because they've disobeyed God and God's commandment. Of course, Jeremiah, as a prophet, is one who always says, you gotta stop doing the crud that you're doing. So I see that too, but it's really a terrible vision of not only the destruction that's there, but also the transgressions and bad behavior of the people of Jerusalem. And we know this was a warring period where, anyway, that's my take.
Great, thank you, Susan. Other reflections or thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I think, Susan, you covered a lot of these important points. Not only God's infliction, it's not just the enemies, the human enemies who cause these challenges, but God is inflicting this. There's no hope in it. It also seems to allude to that the Israelites themselves are responsible for this. So there's also this need to think about, well, what did we do to deserve this? And that plays a central role as well. Ben.
Thank you, Rabbi. Excuse me, thank you. The line, and I don't know if I got it exactly right, the foe has laid hands on everything dear. And that really struck me for right now with the terrible October the 7th, and innocent kids at a music festival, and we have children at music festivals, and something so dear to be attacked like that. So that I just resonated for right now, that one line.
Thank you. Brad?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I thought there would have been more of a focus on the destruction of the temple, and that maybe that went right by me, but I didn't find that particularly in this language. I mean, it's much broader than the destruction of the temple. In fact, the destruction of the temple didn't even seem to be present.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good observation. This is really not about the temple itself. It's about the society and the people in the city, and the way of life. That, of course, there are references to the temple through the idea of the priests. So kind of those who provided for the temple are referenced, but the physical building itself and in its centrality are less of a focus than the people who live in Jerusalem, for sure. Great point. Anything else? Okay, so I want us to look at now some contemporary laments, so to speak, beginning with one. I'll just share the screen so you can see a little bit about this man. This next one I'll read, and then we'll watch the Jerusalem Orchestra performing it. We didn't meet with this man, but we did hear, we did read his kinah. He's a singer, and he plays these Middle Eastern instruments, and a poet and composer of piyutim, which are traditional religious songs, and teacher of Middle Eastern music, and has performed a lot both of music and his poetry. And he wrote this after October 7th. Just a couple of the notes here, just so you see them as when I read them, you can make reference to these. So the opening words of Lamentations, Echa, which are translated as alas or how, is often used in Jewish poetry of lament, which are called keynote, that memorialize the Jewish people. And Be'eri, the kibbutz be'eri means my well. And so that's the idea of a well, of where water comes from. And he makes a reference to the festival of Simchat Torah, on which the massacres took place, because it took place on Simchat Torah. And it's good enough. So I'll read it. Echa, alas, my well has turned into my grave, and the day of my light has become my darkness. And all fruit has been destroyed, and my singing overturned. My eyes pour forth water from the depth of my brokenness. Echa, Torah, so orderly and arranged, so full of splendor, did not come to our aid. And on the day of her exalting, I have lost my standing. My eyes pour forth water from the depth of my brokenness. Echa, Israel, on a day of calling to God, life was requested, but chaos received. Elder and infant wallow in blood, his festival desecrated by a merciless enemy. My eyes pour forth water from the depth of my brokenness. Echa, mothers, girls, and young women, taken into captivity as in the days of pogroms, and the fences of the righteous sheep were breached, and the dancing ceased, and the songs of my singers, my eyes pour forth water from the depth of my brokenness. And Echa, I wonder, you who ennobled her, how long shall a nation live in upheaval? How long shall her stature be brought low to the ground? And now arise to kindle my lamp, and from the well springs of your mercy, heal my brokenness, and my eye that pours forth will water Be'eri. Any initial reactions? Anything that stands out to you?
Wait, what is that Be'eri? Could you translate that?
My well. But Be'eri is also the name of one of the kibbutzim that was attacked, where many were killed and taken hostage. So he's playing on words, this idea of the well, or water. My eye, pull it up again. You can see it. My eyes pour forth water from the depths of my brokenness, kind of making references again to a well. There are references to Simchat Torah, right? This day of my light, we're supposed to think about the Torah as a light unto the nations. Torah so orderly and arranged, so full of splendor, did not come to our aid. And on the day of her exalting, which is of course Simchat Torah, I have lost my standing. So again, this where Torah was supposed to stand at the center of how we find strength and support traditionally in our community, how on this day Torah was broken, and the order and the structure that Torah is supposed to give to our lives was shattered, was broken, like the tablets. And again, it's this in the same kind of style of these laments, similar to what we read from the Book of Lamentations. Any other reflections? Anything else that stood out? Okay. Righteous sheep. This idea of the sheep, by the way, it comes up again in some weeks with the high holidays. Unatana Tokef, which references the idea that we pass under the staff like sheep, not sheep to slaughter, but to this idea that God is our shepherd. And here this idea that the fences of the righteous sheep were breached, and the dancing ceased. So I want to show you the music video. It's very different. I remember what we read this, we dissected it in more detail than we're doing now even, but and then watched the video. And the video is, I don't know, I'll be curious what you think of this interpretation of how they decide to interpret this this kinah, this poem. And it became very popular, and I know many places around this country and throughout Israel will be reading this on Tisha B'Av on Monday night. But I wanted us just to hear this version. Curious then afterwards what you think of it. What story are they trying to say?
ויום מאורי הפך שחורי והושחת כל פרי ונהפך שירי אני נובע מים מעומק שברי
למען קומה תושפל אדמה ועתה קומה להאיר נרי ובעין רחמך תרפא שברי ואני הנובעת תשקה בארי ואני הנובעת תשקה בארי.
Thoughts, reactions? Yeah, Panina.
I think the response is different. I think they learned from all this oy vey, and the response is definitely different. So something was learned from this era, not to sit quietly and just take it. But at that time, they had no choice. They had no innovations to make their own ammunitions, the resources for the materials for it. It's a different world. And I think because of it, the reaction is different. We don't just sit there and cry. We do something about it, I think. Okay? Even if it's the opinion of the people around us, we react differently. We don't just sit there and say, oh, really, look what happened. We deserved it. That's it.
Okay.
So at least it was learned. We learned that if, and a nili mili, if I'm not for myself, who is going to be there? That's all.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You know that there is a law now that the Hasidic boys are supposed to go to the army. They came up with a law now. Yeah. So they were going before, but they used to change clothes so their parents would know that they did it. Today it's open, and so changes are coming.
Yeah. Thank you.
And it does make a difference.
Go ahead, Sydney.
The music was really powerful because it starts out, first of all, the room is empty. So it's the sense of we're alone, but there's a conductor. Who's the conductor? And then the melodic sort of embrace just becomes cacophony, but they're still in sync with each other somehow. And I think that's what I was hearing, that we're in this state of turmoil, but somehow we're staying connected, even if we can't hit all the right notes.
Beautiful.
So
thank you. I'm just going to share it so you guys can review that later. Any other thoughts? Anything else you think was trying to be conveyed with the video itself, or reflections on the poem? And it's a little hard to do poetry when we're not all sitting around together with it, and it's also not something that I think it's a different way of interpreting, and some of these things just take time to sit with. So that's why you have them, so you can sit with them over Shabbat and Tisha B'Av also. Merle?
I just think that the words of both and the melody just make us think. And like Panina said, we have to do something. We can't just sit here and expect something to happen. We have to be, however we can do it, whether it be vocal or monetary or whatever help is needed in some way, we have to be present and we have to be aware. We have to make, and for those who aren't aware, they have to be made aware so that they get the message.
Another thing, women are flying planes. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And the most advanced and the most newest plane that was introduced in Israel, a girl. It's a cousin or a niece of somebody that I know. She was the only one, and I couldn't have said even her name out loud on the phone in case somebody is missing. But she was the only one on the first plane that came that was like so advanced and so amazing. So I say that that's another difference. We have it's a community that today we could say double because the women force is included.
There was an entire women's tank unit on October 7th.
Yeah.
I wanted to Merle's point, I want to share another modern poem that takes a little bit, kind of moves and tries to do what I think Penina and Merle are both referencing. And so I want to look at this one by Leora Elon, who is a survivor of the slaughter at Kibbutz Kfar Aza, called Lamentation for a Beloved Land. Oh, how your dwellings have been turned into ruins. Your people become exiles in their own land. Oh, betrayed land, your sons betrayed you. They put their desires before all else. They sealed your fate with their very tongues. They abandoned you in their hearts, lost in their ways. Oh, how your kibbutzim were destroyed, cities made desolate, your people dead, your fields wasting away, furrows ravaged, become fields of horror, all eyes devastated, dried out of tears. Your sons, daughters, butchered, undefended, fair maidens hauled into captivity, and the plotters standing before them, whispering, rustling, and the land was silent. Woe unto you, you cowards, sitting carelessly in your cushioned chairs, entrusted with the lives of beloved captives while mothers and fathers are wrapped in their grief. We will yet return and rebuild you, the soil of our homeland. We will yet return and sing in your fields a joyous song. Your sons will yet return to love and forgive. Your daughters will yet return to complete the thankful song. For neighbors and fellows who had become our enemies, when our eyes will see peace between us. And we will cast a prayer together for borders of tranquility, for becoming good neighbors, for leaders with humility, that we will respect each other, brothers and sisters, when you will sprout again, O land, grain and wheat. What do you think about this one? Takes a different tone towards the end than both Be'eri and the Book of Lamentations. So I'm curious what you think of the transition that is made in this one. Susan?
Oh, me?
Yeah, I thought you had your hand up. I don't have to put you on the spot.
Okay. All right, here, and I was just thinking about it. It's a more hopeful tone, certainly. And I'm wondering, I assume it was written by someone who was on the border, because
she survived from one of the border kibbutzim.
The kibbutzim, because they were good. Her theme is still connecting with other border people. With the Gazans, the enemies that were on the border, which was, that's the destruction happened to many of those kibbutzim who actually forged links with the Palestinians in Gaza. But interestingly, she doesn't seem to she bypasses that and wants to return to the tranquility that she felt before, at least the camaraderie and the connection that she felt before, but doesn't feel betrayed by the trust that the Israeli kibbutzim gave to the Gazans that they helped. So I think that's kind of interesting. But on the other hand, she does evolve with hope. And at the end, which is what we need to have. So
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point, Susan, about the Palestinian neighbors that she wants to find peace, and who she really feels betrayed by, if
right.
is the government. Really, well, woe unto you, you cowards, sitting carelessly in your cushioned chairs, entrusted with the lives of beloved captives, while mothers and fathers are wrapped in their grief. Right, her critique seems to be based more on the internal divisions and the Israelis, who she seems to be blaming in some ways for some of this, while ending less about peace with amongst Israelis, but more about returning to the home and really looking for the sense of peace on the borders, and a hopeful return to peace, which is such a contrast from the beginning. To be able to feel as though you can have survived the slaughter of Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and to then to write what she does at the end, to me is really surprising that someone can have that strength, so to speak, to find that hope. Penina.
Okay, I am. For those people who really don't really remember the geography of Gaza, Gaza was actually a piece of Egypt. It belongs to Egypt. It was a piece of land that belonged to Egypt. They didn't want them. And Golda Meir, when she negotiated the peace, she told that person that was in time that she dealt with, who when he came, she told him, what took you so long? And they finally decided they wouldn't do the peace unless we took Gaza out of their hands. They didn't want them. So the world doesn't remember this. So when they're yelling and talking about two-state solutions, what kind of two-state they're talking about? That wasn't even a piece of Israel. So it's like, and now they found out that few of the people that helped them over there, the UNRWA, they call it, they found out now that they were, and they actually now putting them, they only find them, excuse me. They didn't fire them, they only find them, that they were a part of the, what happened in, up there in the concert, up in the north. They actually participated, so they only find them. So I think we need to be more gutsy and educate the people that are not Jewish, and actually put them and remind them what is it that happened, and how did we decide, how did we become to be even neighbors with Gaza? Because nobody wanted them. So she said, okay, leave them, let's do that peace, we'll take care of them. And the problem with Netanyahu is that he puts he gave them a lot of money and a lot of support to build this. And yet look what they did. Okay. So it shows you that we need also to change the information that the world around us is dishing out, and know our own history and know our own what's going on. So we wouldn't be helping the ones that really don't know, doesn't want to know, of how this whole thing really happened, that they are there to begin with.
Okay, thank you.
So
Penina.
maybe this is going to be changing the way we get help from other people, knowing so it happened because we were too good to them.
Okay,
so sometimes to sit there and cry all day, it's not enough. You have to educate the whole world. That's what it is.
Thank you. I want to get other people to share. Merle and Brad.
I'm just thinking about my granddaughters coming home from camp the other day, and where our camps and all of the other Jewish camps have Israeli students that come as counselors or some kind of specialists or staff. And I guess tonight's discussion at the Shabbat dinner table will be, from me, was there any discussion from these counselors that were with our kids for the summer? Was there any discussion about what's going on and what they're going home to, and what and their fears, or maybe positivity of going, they're home now. They're back in Israel. They left the same day. They left on Sunday when our kids came home. And so I guess that's what I need to know is how are these youth who are, I think they have just finished high school, how they're being educated as to what has to be done before they go in the army.
Good point. Good point.
Thank you.
If it comes to that discussion, that will be fabulous. If not,
Make it come to the discussion.
well, I can't, I can't force their head on the dinner table,
Well,
but I can make the effort.
Oh, you can tell the kids, tell your counselors. That's it.
Well, I'm sure that our rabbi will have it.
Brad.
Yeah, Rabbi, I also focused on that sentence about woe to the leaders sitting in their cushioned chairs. And I think this poem would have been more effective if it not only pointed out that, yes, maybe it was the Israelis who were sitting in their cushioned chairs in Jerusalem, but what about Hamas, who's sitting in their cushioned chairs in Qatar and in Iran? And I mean, those leaders are also sitting in their cushioned chairs. I thought that it would have been more effective if it was, that image was expanded.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Susan, did you have your hand? Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Penina for that, because I think there's also a degree, I mean, it was hopeful, but it's also a degree, I think, of naivete. Thinking that, I mean, who was attacked? Well, they were young people, secular Israelis. They didn't attack the religious, or I mean, that dawned on me. And whom did they attack? They attacked those Israelis that were helping them. What?
Yeah, but that's what makes this so much more.
So, I think it's
survivor of this. She was there.
Yeah, a kind of thing. They were all in this. I shouldn't be saying this because I shouldn't discourage them for reaching out. On the other hand, is I think a great degree of naivete in that, and they attacked some of the most helpful people in the kibbutz. I forgot the name, the Canadian woman who really made it a career to take care of the Gazans, taking them to doctors, taking help, transporting them. And what happened? They informed Hamas, and it was this was a terrifying, brutal situation. But until one realizes it comes to terms with the hatred that's there, then I think we're still in a quagmire. We're in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, we're definitely in a difficult situation. I think what speaks to me about this particular poem is that it was written by someone who survived this. I mean, she was there and she was attacked and she was witness to the destruction and the breakdown of trust that had existed, and also the breakdown of trust she had in her own government and in her Palestinian neighbors. And yet, and I don't know exactly when she wrote this, how soon after October 7th, yet she still ends with this sense of peace. And I think she is in the minority. And I bring it up because most people are not in a place like this poem. Most people are still in a place of the Book of Lamentations where we are not at the place to go to that place of hope. And at the same time, we have to somehow figure out how to get there, because that is what we do as Jews also. But that's the challenge that we have been confronts us after October 7th, in a way that is really challenging for the Jewish community. It's very challenging for Israelis, and it's challenging for us as American Jews as well. And I think that's the tension that we're walking into this Tisha B'Av, is the destruction feels so, we're still so in it. And one of the things that's challenging about her poem is how can you already be talking about peace and hope when we're still in it? And that is where most Israelis are. And where at the same time, is it partly our responsibility as American Jews to help to try and bring that hope and to try and think about the bigger picture? This is the struggle that I think we're facing right now. So we're out of time. I wish we had more time. You have the rest of the text, so I hope you take a little time to reflect this weekend, and then on Tisha B'Av starts Monday night and all day Tuesday. Again, maybe I'll see some of you on Monday night. But this is really that day, starting Monday night, is a chance to really think about all the challenges we faced, but not to only sit in that discomfort. How do we end Tisha B'Av on Tuesday night with some sense of what we personally want to do to bring about more hope, what we believe the Jewish community and the world can do to bring about more hope into this very destructive and challenging time. So again, this is not the most upbeat of Torah studies, but this is the reality of our tradition, is that we have a day like this in our calendar, and I think it's there for a reason. We need a day. Given our history, we have a lot to lament, and we deserve that day, and yet we still have 364 other days of the year where we are supposed to try and find that strength and hope within us. So wishing that for all of us as we go into Shabbat. So thank you all for being here, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.